To our amazing audience at Midnight Tales Radio, welcome and thank you for being here. Your presence is what makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to know which part of the world you're joining us from today. And now, let's dive into today's story. The name in the wall. The rain kept me awake. Then came the scraping sound from the other side of the wall. The super said Charlotte moved out last week. When I held my breath and crept closer, the sound stopped. It was moving with me. The super pulled the file. Wait. This wall. They buried the girl who vanished last month inside it. Plaster crumbled. Something cold pressed against my ear. And I heard my name, whispered by the thing inside the wall. Rain drummed a relentless dull beat on the tin roof overhead. Each heavy drop felt like an ice pick driving into Ella's temples. She rolled over, the cheap mattress springs groaning like a dying thing in the midnight silence of her tiny apartment. The darkness was thick as spilled ink, heavy with the damp, musty smell of old buildings, pressing down on her chest. Insomnia coated her mind like oil. She counted the cracks on the ceiling for the 37th time. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound was faint but razor-sharp, slicing through the downpour, drilling straight into her ear canal. Like something impossibly hard was grating, gnawing cement. Brick? Right next door, on the other side of the flimsy, cheaply plastered wall. Ella's eyes snapped open. She held her breath. In the dark, her hearing sharpened. The sound had a rhythm. A horrible, grating rhythm. Scrape, scrape. Not like mice scratching. Mice weren't this heavy. Not this purposeful. It was more like a dull saw, patiently sawing through bone. Charlotte? The neighbor? That always perfectly made-up girl who blasted pop music? Ella remembered seeing her yesterday at the stairwell, dragging a huge suitcase, her face oddly, almost feverishly bright. Out of this dump! Charlotte had chirped, chin high. So what was that sound? Scrape, scrape, scrape. It didn't stop. If anything, as Ella strained to listen, it grew clearer. An icy prickle crawled up her spine, tightening her scalp. She hunched her shoulders, gooseflesh rising under the thin blanket. She turned her head, pressing her ear hard into the cold pillow, trying to block it out. But the monotonous scraping was a burrowing insect in her brain, relentless and suffocating. Time crawled in the dark, warped by the awful sound. Finally, Ella couldn't take it. She threw off the blanket and sat up. The old floorboards screamed under her weight, shockingly loud in the rainy silence. The sound stopped. Vanished. Utterly. As if it had never been. Only the rain remained. Ella froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. An absurd crawling feeling of being watched seized her. Drawn by invisible strings, she slid barefoot to the wall. The rough plaster felt cold under her fingers. She hesitated, held her breath, and slowly pressed her right ear against it. The wall was icy, tasting of dust. She focused every shred of attention, listening for the faintest whisper from the other side. Silence. Absolute, vacuum silence. She frowned. The source, it had been right here. Instinctively, she shifted her weight, sliding her ear slowly left along the cold surface. Just as her left foot settled and her right lifted. Scrape dot, scrape dot, scrape dot. The hair, raising grating sound, faint but horrifyingly distinct, came from inside the wall, precisely where her ear was pressed. Ella recoiled as if burned, slamming her back against the cold edge of her dresser. A dull ache bloomed. She clamped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with terror, pupils dilating in the dark. Cold fear, a constricting serpent, squeezed her heart, stealing her breath. The sound, it followed her. The thought was insane, but the icy proof was etched onto her hearing. What was in the wall? Could it feel her? Was it tracking her? A chill shot from her soles to her skull. Ella couldn't stay another second in this dark room with its phantom sounds. She stumbled to the door, practically falling into the dim, dusty corridor reeking of bleach. The thin line of yellow light under the super's door at the end was her only lifeline. She lunged for it, pounding frantically on the thin wood. Bob! Mr. Bob! Open up, now! Muffled grumbles and the scrape of something heavy came from inside. After an agonizing eternity, the door creaked open a crack. Super Bob's wrinkled, sleep, swollen face peered out, sparse white hair sticking up. He was wrapped in a faded bathrobe, bleary eyes thick with annoyance. Lord above, Miss Ella, he grumbled, his voice thick with sleep. What time d'ye call this? The Sky Fallon. Next door. 302. Ella's voice was shrill, trembling, words tumbling over each other. There's a sound. Inside the wall scraping. Like someone chewing the wall. It wouldn't stop. Charlotte, she moved, right? What is it? Bob paused, rubbing his eyes. The bleariness seemed to thin, replaced by confusion and a flicker of something heavier. He frowned, deep creases mapping his face. 302? Charlotte? He smacked his lips, recalling. The blonde? Moved out last week. Handed in her keys. Left in a hurry. Place is empty. Empty. Ella's voice pitched higher, laced with disbelief and terror. Then what's the sound in the wall? I heard it. Clear as anything. It moved when I did. She babbled out the awful scraping and its horrifying mobility. Moved with you? Bob's confusion deepened, his brow furrowing into a canyon. He looked her up and down, taking in the pallor and the panic in her eyes, maybe wondering if she was sleepwalking or hallucinating. He was silent for a few seconds, and that heavy look returned, darker this time. He sighed, stepping aside. Get in here. Cold out. I gotta check something. The super's closet-sized room was cramped, smelling of stale tobacco and old paper. A single low-watt bulb cast a sickly yellow glow. Bob dragged a protesting chair for Ella, then hunched over a dusty metal filing cabinet in the corner. It screeched as he wrestled a drawer open, rifling through papers with rough, scraping sounds. Ella sat rigidly, fingers knotted together, white-knuckled. The silence in the little room and the monotonous rustling did nothing to calm her nerves. Instead, the phantom scraping echoed louder, clearer, more terrifying in her mind. 302,302, Bob muttered, thick fingers skimming over yellowed leases and registration forms. Dust motes danced in the weak light like tiny specters. Suddenly, he stopped. His finger rested on a noticeably darker, curled, edged form. Got it, he mumbled, voice dry. He lifted the paper to the light, squinting at the faded writing. The yellow glow etched his profile, and his expression slowly hardened, freezing into a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He even rapped his knuckles hard against his temple, as if to dislodge a thought. Ella's heart hammered in her throat. She could almost hear the blood roaring in her ears. Mr. Bob? What is it? Bob's head snapped up. His bleary eyes locked onto Ella's, pupils wide with shock in the gloom. His mouth opened, his Adam's apple bobbing convulsively before a voice like sandpaper on rust scraped out, each word an effort. Miss Ella, this ain't right. He swallowed hard. The sound choked. 302, before Charlotte was that Lily girl. She went missing last month. Missing? Ella's voice cracked, icy dread freezing her limbs. Bob nodded grimly, his face a grotesque mask of fear and confusion. His trembling finger jabbed at the scrawled writing. See here. Lily Parker? Moved. In date, but she vanished a week before her lease ended. Cops came, searched the place, found nothing. Landlord was desperate, cleared it out, stuck Charlotte in, but Bo. His voice dropped to a low, conspiratorial rasp, afraid to wake something. But in the file, Super's notes here in red ink, he thrust the brittle paper toward her. In the yellow light, in the corner, a line of faded yet still luridly crimson writing, like dried blood, slammed into Ella's vision. Note: structural anomaly in east wall of 302 master bedroom. Prior tenant complaints of noises. Inspection inconclusive. possibly related to decommissioned utility chase per original blueprints. Do not attempt to breach wall. Decommissioned chase? Sealed decades ago? Noises. Ella's mind reeled as if struck. The relentless scraping, the sound moving inside the wall, suddenly had a terrifyingly specific, yet infinitely more horrifying source. Not Charlotte. Not even Lily, something older. Something sealed inside the walled space. A thing? At that moment, thud. A dull, heavy impact, muffled by walls and the corridor, vibrated from the direction of Ella's apartment. Ella jolted off the chair, its legs shrieking on the concrete floor. Bob jumped, the yellowed form fluttering from his grasp. "It's my room!" Ella's voice shattered. Terror gripped her, but a stronger, more primal pull drew her forward. "I have to go see. Miss Ella." "Don't." "Wait." Bob yelped, grabbing futilely at air as Ella bolted from his door. Cold corridor air, thick with dust, hit her face. Her own door stood slightly ajar. She'd been too panicked to shut it properly. That thud came from inside. Her heart battered against her ribs. Ella reached her door, hand on the cold knob, fingers numb. Silence within. She sucked in a breath tasting of iron. The taste of fear. She pushed hard. The door swung open. Thick darkness still filled the room, only faint streetlight outlining furniture. Silence. Absolute silence. The thud might have been a dream. Ella leaned against the doorframe, gasping, cold air burning her lungs. She fumbled for the light switch. The old fluorescent tube flickered, buzzed angrily, then grudgingly flooded the small room with harsh white light, banishing the deepest shadows but revealing every cheap, rough detail. Ella's gaze, driven by instinctive terror, snapped to the wall separating her from 302. Right above her bed, about head height. A large patch of gray-white plaster had crumbled like dried riverbed, dust motes swirling in the light. Beneath it lay exposed, rougher, darker concrete, an ugly, ragged wound. And at the very center of that wound, a tiny hole. Small, barely pencil, lead thick, pitch black. As if something from inside slowly, persistently had drilled its way out. Ella's breath hitched. Her blood froze, then surged violently to her head. Her legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot, eyes riveted on that tiny black maw. An indescribable cold sensation slithered up her spine, locking her joints. Was it moving? Or just the light? In the suffocating silence, Ella moved like a puppet, one stiff, jerky step after another toward the wall. Her gaze never left the hole. Each step echoed her own deafening heartbeat. Closer. Closer still. She could see the rough concrete grains around the hole's edge, smell the thick chalky dust of fallen plaster. Finally, she stood before it less than a step away. The wall radiated cold. The tiny hole loomed large, an entrance to an abyss. A mad, irresistible urge seized her. Listen. Listen to what was inside the wall now. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, she tilted her head, held her breath, as if her heart had stopped. Only the faint buzz of the fluorescent remained. She brought her ice, cold right ear, millimeter by millimeter, toward the center of the plaster wound, toward that dark, deep hole. Her ear touched the cold, rough concrete. A shiver ran through her, just as her ear canal completely covered the tiny opening. Something cold, hard, and slick with a damp, viscous slime pressed abruptly, shockingly, against her ear canal from the other side of the hole. It felt like a stone dragged from icy water, or like smooth, cold scales. All the blood in Ella's body surged to her head, then froze. A choked, strangled gasp ripped from her throat. Every instinct screamed to shriek, to flee, but paralyzing terror locked her in place like chains. Her eyes bulged, seeing only the crumbling gray wall and the cold alien intrusion against her ear. Time stopped. In that silent, soul-shattering instant, a voice, faint yet razor, sharp, pierced the thin concrete, wormed through that icy hole, and burned itself into her brain. It was guttural, mangled, inhuman, like coarse sandpaper dragged over rusted pipe. Each syllable was distorted, yet horrifyingly clear, forming two words. Ella. It was calling her name. The thing in the wall was calling her name.